as we record this, it's July 4th weekend. The America's birthday, one of the big, the America Day itself. I don't know if you'll see it in time for that, but it's July 3rd as we record this. And America's in rough shape. So I thought solemnly we could discuss pieces that are perhaps critical of America and how we treat, the more somber side of patriotism. Last night I watched First Blood, one of my personal favorite films, the tragic recount of a Vietnam War vet struggling with PTSD and the rejection he faced from people who stigmatized him for his action in the war. It is a somber piece about depression and the harrowing violence we as a country endured and inflicted in something that could have been entirely avoided. What did you bring to discuss America's darker history?
I found a show where US soldiers fight a really big baby man and toy soldiers. Oh, and there's also a lake of butterscotch. So, yeah, harrowing stuff.
Does one of the men have a parrot?
One of them has a parrot. One of them has a monkey.
Okay, we can roll with that.
Excellent.
I approve.
Yo, Joe!
He'll fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there. It's G.I. Joe against Cobra, the enemy, fighting to save the day. He never gives up, he's always there, fighting for freedom over land and air. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose? To defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
He never gives up, he'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe.
We watched G.I. Joe, the original show.
G.I. Joe, the original show.
Oh, wait. This is the favorite of yours, not just a favorite, but the favorite of the classic Saturday morning cartoons. And I had watched more modern iterations, especially for some work we've done together with the Cobra industry characters. Renegades, is that the show?
That's the one, yeah, that's the most recent.
Yeah, I watched a lot of that one for those projects. But this one, I really, like with a lot of 80s shows like this, you kind of know the format. Like people parody He-Man and Ninja Turtles all the time to the point that you're very familiar with how those kind of work. G.I. Joe, I feel like people didn't really ape a ton outside of like the PSA segments, which maybe were they even part of this particular iteration? Because we didn't see them in the 3 episodes we saw.
They were. I think I know these episodes that we watched were uploaded to the Hasbro channel. And I know when the DVDs came out, they did like the PSAs separately. So I don't know if they were just at random, just chucked at the end of random episodes and they weren't part of the original animation reels or whatever. I don't know. But they are part of this show though, definitely.
That would personally surprise me if they were random, because it strikes me as a way to case by case compensate runtime. But I guess I wouldn't know for sure. I'm not as familiar.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they only had like a finite amount of them. There's 100. There's 100 episodes of G.I. Joe, and there's nowhere near that many PSAs.
I see.
So, I don't know. I don't know how maybe they just did one a week or something.
That's interesting. All right, I didn't know. Knowing is half the battle.
Indeed, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The thing about G.I. Joe that's like the biggest layman, I'm sure you've heard this a billion times. I'm always a little surprised. I always thought G.I. Joe was a guy and not like the team.
Yeah, I think that's true of everybody. It was certainly true of me before I watched it. I always assumed that Duke, who's the blonde-haired main character guy, I always saw him in the artwork of the show and just pictures from it, and I always just assumed he was Joe. But he's not.
Yeah.
And there is no G.I. Joe. Well, there was a G.I. Joe. Joe Cotton is the original G.I Joe that supposedly the team is named after. And he never shows up in this show, or that's never explained within the animated series. But he was a character in the comics.
I see.
And he was played by Bruce Willis in the G.I Joe film.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
See, you said Duke was the main character, and I recall Duke being the lead of Renegades. Just by proxy of the episodes we picked, I almost found myself feeling Flint was the G.I. Joe's lead. They mentioned he's like the second in command in the Game Master one. But I kind of just by the sheer luck of the episodes, and maybe because I was introduced to Flint by order of appearance first in that episode, and then maybe I confused him with Duke when there was just a hero guy on screen. But I kind of thought this was like the Flint and Lady J show.
You're right. Because it is. I think because Duke was the first one who got introduced. It was Duke and Scarlet were like the first couple, and they got introduced in the first two miniseries. Flint and Lady J weren't in the first one, but they were introduced in the second one. And I think it was just generally decided by the people who worked on the animated series that Flint and Lady J were more interesting characters. So they definitely prioritized them. Like, I think if you stack up the appearances of characters in the cartoon, the character who appeared in the most episodes was Lady J. Shortly followed by Cobra Commander, I believe, and then Flint was really high up there. It was like Lady J, Cobra Commander, Flint, Destro were like the characters who appeared in the most. And Duke like drops off. He drops off the face of the planet in the second series. No one cares about Duke, and then eventually they kill him off in the movie. Because apparently one of the writers was like, "Why do we need Duke? We've got Flint." And they just decided he was like, "Yeah, we don't need him anymore. We've got plenty of characters. They can step up that are more interesting." Yeah, and I think they are much better. I think maybe just by virtue of voice acting, I think Flint and Lady J are the more likable, interesting characters.
Get me out of here! I'm sinking in caramel!
Not caramel, butterscotch!
What do we do now, Baroness? We can either save them or we can fight. There's no time to do both.
You get Lady J out first, you might double team me. If I get the commander out first, we will definitely jump you.
I'll tell you what, Baroness. You'll just have to trust me. You save Lady J, I'll save Cobra Commander.
This is disgusting!
So the episodes I chose for you were like three of my favorite ones. And I think it's a really strong show in general. I think there's some sort of like it took them a while to find their feet in terms of the style they wanted for the show. But I think it stands heads and shoulders above all the other 80 shows. I'd say it's the most maturely written, even though it's a bit insane at times and a bit ridiculous. Like the character writing in this, I think is better than, it's certainly better than He-Man. He-Man is charming and I can't begrudge He-Man anything, but I think this is a better show. Just the characters are just deeper, more complex. It seems to be skewing it towards like a slightly older audience, like maybe like early, kids over 10, I guess. A little older.
Well, maybe a big sign of that is with the Destro episode, we practically had a entire villain focused half hour. Arguably Lady J is like the protagonist of it, but it's mostly a Destro and Baroness story, which I kind of have a harder time imagining like there being an interpersonal relational conflict between two villains in like Ninja Turtles or He-Man in quite that way.
Yeah, I couldn't see like Evelyn and Skeletor having like a fallout and like her sort of like smacking him across the face in like a lover's spat type thing. This sort of it doesn't treat you like you're an idiot. Not that He-Man did, but I think they're more prepared to go, this is about relationships. These two are they've got something going on. It's not the most healthy relationship,
Right.
but here it is.
Come in, Destro, come in. Stop that, Destro. I see you both clearly, and I am stunned.
She had something in her eye, Cobra Commander.
My eye, she did.
I mean, you have the comic of G.I. Joe is a lot more grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And the show just tends to be a bit more, it embraces the weird sci-fi elements of G.I. Joe. And it's like, let's just go crazy with it. We'll do what we want.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
So I decided to split G.I. Joe up for you into, we'll watch a couple of episodes of season 1. I've always found there's quite a big tonal shift in season 2 because Spencer comes along, there's new characters and there's new story editors behind the scenes, and it becomes a lot darker. And I was like, it would be interesting for you to watch some of these, then go to season 2 and see, this is this may be a bit different. It might just be me embellishing my own views, but I look forward to us getting to season 2 so you can see some of that shift.
Were all 3 of these in season 1?
They were, yes.
Oh, okay. So Game Master was such a outlandish villain. He struck me as a late game addition. So I'm a little surprised by that, actually.
Oh yeah, it's kind of weird because season 1 is it has all the weird episodes, and then season 2 tends to be a bit more grounded, even though there's still there's still a lot of sci-fi stuff in season 2, which is kind of fantastical, but it's more character drama driven, I would say. And season 1 tends to have crazy stuff this the Games Master one is one of the most mad, but there's also Cobra Commander carves his face into the moon with a giant laser. There's a comedy episode where they keep getting phone calls from someone who keeps going, "The Viper is coming." And the whole thing is just this comedy of errors between no one knows who the Viper is. And it turns out she's just a window wiper who calls up to advertise his services by saying the Viper is coming, but he's got a Russian accent, so it comes out as the Viper. They do a lot of weird stuff. We watched the Games Master Skeletons in the Closet and Cold Slither, and Cold Slither is another weird one, another comedy one.
I was going to say something that's very endearing to me is that it almost feels like the Joes and the Cobra guys are just neighbors. And sometimes weird shit just happens and they're both kind of trying to figure it out. Case in point in the Games Master, where both sides accuse the other of taking the people that the Games Master took. And I kind of love that the Joes aren't above torture.
Yeah, poor Zartan. They threatened to infect him with some virus that would kill him. It's quite interesting. I love just the chaos it causes when they're all kidnapped, and Destro's he taps a dummy of Cobra Commander on the shoulder and the head just pops off and he's like, ah!
I remember that from your Cobra Commander supercut from a while back. That was just the small reprieve, because that was 15 instances of him yelling, "Destro, get me out of here!"
Everyone has a relationship with one another in this series. Nobody treats each other as disposable, interchangeable henchmen. They've all got their own little idiosyncrasies and the ways they react to people and whose side they fall on. Zartan is immediately accuses Destro of being the one who kidnapped Cobra Commander,
right?
Which is not a bad call, because maybe it was. Yeah. That's immediately what you would think. It's it's probably you, Destro. But Destro, to his credit in this one, is no, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to find the guy.
Yeah. There's I love how they even go as far as to explain absent. They were "Where is Major Blood?" And they're he's applying for unemployment.
He'd make a good shipping clerk. Yeah. The thing I love about the Cold Slither one is that it's a really outlandish, insane plan, but he pulls it off. And the whole episode is Cobra Commander's financial difficulties. And Destro must have just been I've got this subliminal messaging technology. We could do something with that. And Cobra Commander's plan is, well, I'll form a rock band and we'll recoup our losses.
Yeah.
And he does, and it works. And he pays off all his debts. And even though like the plan to ultimately like control the masses at the end fails, he does get back on his feet and he pays off all the outstanding loans and everything. So
Right.
it's kind of like it's an example of how competent I think Cobra Commander can be. Like as the leader of an organization, his ideas are utterly insane, but somehow he keeps it together.
It's like sans the notion of mind control after the fact. If the end game was to form a band and make enough money to repay your debts, he didn't do anything wrong, and he
No.
did win. Cold Slither kind of slaps, so I don't blame anyone.
It's a good song called Slither.
Excuse me, sir, but we are now into overtime, and the union rules specifically state...
The only union they should be concerned with is the one between their heads and their shoulders.
Yes, sir.
Places, everyone!
Okay, let's try it again. Action!
Action! Everybody, action! We're Cold Slither, you'll be joining us soon. A band of vipers playing our tune. With an iron fist and a reptile hiss, we shall rule.
What is that idiot doing?
We've heard it before. We're not gonna play the game no more.
They are animals.
Too late to resist, cause Cobra is strong.
Oh my goodness, we're going way over budget.
We're Cold
Barbarians!
Slither. Every man on the ship.
No! Cut!
You fool! This is what I want! Keep the film rolling!
We're tired of words. We've heard it before.
So, what do you think? We're in the top 20 with a bullet in just 3 days!
I also love that there's such outlandish Saturday morning villains still, that even though they're dealing with grounded financial problems, Cobra Commander's financial advisors are like weird twins differentiated by a scar.
Yeah.
Tomax and Zammot.
Yeah. I like that they kind of come after him.
Yeah.
They're a pair of assholes. They're the twins. They're like,
They're weird. There's 70s haircuts.
Yeah, they're such snobs. Like nobody else seems to like them. There's a bit in it's the first episode they show up in, and Tomax is like he's trying to find his brother because his brother's been kidnapped by the Joes somewhere. And Cobra Commander's like, absolutely not. You're not doing this rescue mission. And then he's like, well, we'll pull our funding. And the Cobra Commander is immediately like, oh, absolutely. I wish you nothing but success. And then it turns out after they've gone, Cobra Commander's like, don't wait for him to come back. It's like, just switch on the Pyramid of Darkness and doom them both. And Destro's like, excellent idea, Commander.
Weren't they like cult leaders in Renegades or something?
They were, yeah. They're not in this. They've just got business.
Bit of a strange switch. Let's what else? Yeah, Destro. I feel like Destro in later iterations want to sculpt him into someone a little more sympathetic, where it's like his dynamic with Cobra Commander in this one is like kind of two jerks who both want all the power, just a little.
Yeah, he's the only sane man in this organization, really, and I think that's a great dynamic from just Cobra Commander being a crazy person. And sometimes he'll listen to Destro's suggestions, but most of the time he'll just be like, "Shut up, Destro. We're gonna do things my way," and then like inevitably disaster will occur. But I like they have the best scenes, I think. It's that like bickering villain Shredder and Krang-esque dynamic.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit, but like both Shredder and Krang are crazy, even though Krang's, smarter in a raw sense, they're both fucking insane, whereas Destro's just kind of had it with all this.
Yeah.
Throw me a rope, Commander!
Why should I, Destro? Your jealousy jeopardized our mission.
If you care to remain afloat, you will throw a rope immediately.
Of course, Destro. Welcome aboard.
And a good episode, I think, is, well, the one we watched, just expanding on his backstory a bit and his relationship with the Baroness, who he seems to think is like kind of a crazy person, and he doesn't want to be in that relationship. And like, just because he talks to another woman, she disguises herself in like the plan of an absolute psychopath. She disguises herself as, amongst other things, like an international super spy that may or may not actually exist. Lures Destro into having an affair with her while she's in disguise, lures G.I. Joe to his ancestral home so that a battle will break out and it'll be completely destroyed. And then reveals her disguise at the end and like smacks him across the face. All part of her plan to win him back.
I love the exchange where Destro's like, it was a trick. Well, at least I'm not really related to Lady J. And she's like, no, that was true.
Yeah.
And to think I actually believed I was related to a G.I. Joe.
I checked the records, Destro, darling. You are. And this is but a taste of what you shall suffer if you describe me again as, quote, a confused woman with whom I have been erroneously linked.
I hope you never learn what horror your actions may have caused.
Some weird stuff going on in that episode as well, with like a cult that worships a Cthulhu-esque Lovecraftian monster in Destro's dungeon.
Yeah, that was a little is he Scottish in this show? It's a little hard to place some of the accents.
Yeah, I guess he's from Scotland because that's where the ancestral home is, but he doesn't sound it to me. I wouldn't have thought that was a Scottish accent in any way.
Not quite.
That monster does come back, by the way.
Wonderful.
There is a sequel.
Yeah, the big Shumagaroth looking dude. His eye kind of crept out from the big hole.
Yeah, there's an episode in season 2 which you might have seen some clips of, which I was going to select for our season 2 watch, where Cobra Commander goes back to like the ruins of Destro's house, and he summons the monster to kill Serpentor.
I dig it. I love it.
It's a good episode. It's my favorite episode of the series.
I thought the choice to put Baroness in a bikini for the entirety of the Game Master episode would boost that even higher, but I've been proven wrong.
They do. They commit to that. Yeah. It's surprising, really.
Is it Creepy Todd's turn to storyboard? God damn.
I love how in that episode where they're all trying to work together, it all just goes like horribly wrong, and they're all trying to steal that helicopter.
Right.
It's like a great line from Lady J where Cobra Commander sees the helicopter and he's like, excellent. I will fly to the nearest island and send help when I arrive. And she's like, you wouldn't leave 2 defenseless ladies by themselves, would you? And he just goes immediately, yes.
Assuming you would send help is kind of pretty oh my god.
There's an earlier bit as well where he's like, I shall get to the nearest island and send help when I arrive. And the Baroness is like, oh, come on, even I do not believe that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they seem relatively okay with letting each other, like even the Flint, like when they're like, we're splitting up and doing this alone, Flint's like, fine by me. Like he kind of doesn't care if they die, which is a little unusual for a cartoon at this point.
He does save Cobra Commander from being stepped on by a giant robot later on.
True. That is true. That's correct.
And then a nice little character moment with the Baroness like comforting Lady J after she thinks Flint is dead.
Right.
when Cobra Commander's just like already planning to fuck them over and steal a helicopter while the Baroness is like consoling a grieving widow.
Oh,
Look! The helicopter!
At last, I will fly to the nearest island and send help when I arrive.
You don't mean you'd leave two defenseless women to fend for themselves?
Yes.
So overall, did you enjoy classic G.I. Joe?
yeah, I got a kick out of it. I'd say like, it's hard to find a 80s Saturday morning cartoon that in art and writing is always all the way holding up. There's some maybe kind of rough frames of this one, but I think it's this weird balance where like it knows it's a bit silly and it's taking itself just seriously enough, but deflating that now and then. I think it strikes a really good gray area there. I like pretty much all the characters. I'm looking forward to more of Shipwreck, the laziest man in the platoon.
Yeah, you asked me for some Shipwreck episodes, and I realized I'd chosen 3 ultimately, where he does very little.
I mean, I get the impression he doesn't do much otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, he has
Personality.
the season 1 finale is an episode called "There's No Place Like Springfield," and it's quite like a dark drama with Shipwreck. And Shipwreck is basically taken to a Cobra town, Springfield, and they sort of they've created all these. Cobra has this technology to create synthoids, which are like duplicates of people, and they've created this whole town full of synthoids to convince Shipwreck that Cobra has been defeated for years. He's now married with like a wife and kid, and they're trying to get him to remember the location of like a secret base or something that Cobra needs. And the only way they can Cobra Commander's plan is to like create this entire simulated town and trick him into revealing the information, which isn't a terrible plan, because I think it is something really important, or something that could like undo Cobra's like, main headquarters. So it's like Shipwreck kind of going through this town about his business and just finding all these weird inaccuracies. It gets very sort of Twilight Zone-esque.
Wow, all right.
And there's like a really harrowing scene where his wife melts. His wife and son melt when he realizes they're not real, and he's really traumatized by it.
Jesus.
And I think the last scene is like him on a ship just being really depressed about like he lost his wife and his family on this island.
Man, that sounds intense. That sounds kind of insane, frankly, but I'm about it. I like it.
It's down to you and me, Plankton Face.
You too, Scarlet? I don't want that to happen to you.
It won't. Just tell me what Mulaney told you.
I don't remember.
Then we have a problem, because I don't believe you.
Drop it, Scarlet. Don't make me hurt you. No! Scarlet, don't go! Ah! Who's doing this to me? What do you want? No, this can't be happening to me. No. Oh no, they're alive. They're still alive.